I used to come here on Saturdays, back when I still had a wedding band cutting a pale circle into my finger, back when I had a job that required a collar and a calendar full of meetings, back when my wife, well, my ex wife, would hook her arm through mine and steer me past the kiosk guy trying to straighten my posture with miracle insoles. We'd split a pretzel in the food court and pretend the mall was charming instead of desperate. Now I sleep inside it. And the thing that nobody tells you about becoming homeless isn't the hunger or the cold or how quickly people learn to look through you like glass. It's how fast you start building rules. Rule 1, never get noticed. Rule 2, never get comfortable. And rule 3, never, ever be somewhere you can't leave in under 10 seconds. Hawthorne Galleria let me live by those rules. During the day, it was a half-alive shopping mall in a half-dead part of town. The kind of place that still had families drifting through on the weekends because it was safer than the streets and the heating worked. The kind of place where some storefronts stayed lit, even with coming soon posters, sun bleached for 3 straight years. But not at night. The place belonged to the cleaning crews and the last lonely employees counting tills. By 10, the security guards started their rounds like clockwork, keys jangling and radios murmuring. But by midnight, Hawthorne Galleria belonged to whatever it wanted to be. I didn't learn that right away. At first, it was just shelter. The mall had a lot of places a person could disappear. Maintenance corridors behind the stores, loading docks that smelled like cardboard and stale air, a whole closed wing where an old anchor store had gone dark and stayed dark, its entrance sealed behind a temporary wall covered in a mural of happy people who had never existed. It was the perfect place to be invisible. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed either. I kept myself clean. I didn't steal. I didn't mess with anyone. I didn't leave trash behind like some kind of marker that said I exist here. I was a guest in a world that didn't want guests, and I behaved like that. I learned the mall's rhythm, the way you learn the moods of a dog you don't fully trust. The morning rush of mall workers in white sneakers, the lunchtime swell of teenagers in packs like schooling fish, the dead, slow hours where the sun came through the skylights and laid bright rectangles on the tile like traps. My favorite time was late afternoon. The mall smelled like cinnamon and cheap perfume. Kids cried and couples fought in low voices. Everyone was too wrapped up in their own problems to look down and notice the man in a hoodie slipping through a door marked employees only. That door was my lifeline. Behind it was a hallway painted the color of old teeth, with scuffed linoleum and humming fluorescent lights. It ran like an artery behind the glossy storefronts, connecting to storage rooms, break rooms, and maintenance closets. And if you knew where to step around the broken tile, down to the service tunnels beneath the mall, it was in one of those maintenance closets that I made my first home. It wasn't much. A folded moving blanket that someone had thrown away, a backpack with everything I owned, a plastic bottle I refilled from a mop sink, a bar of soap because I refused to become the kind of person who stopped caring. I slept sitting up, back against walls, knees hugged to my chest, not because it was comfortable, but because if a door opened, I wanted to be awake before anyone saw me. And most nights, I barely slept at all. It wasn't fear at first. not the way you'd think. It was the mall's sound. Even when it was closed, Hawthorne was never quiet. The air system breathed constantly, a deep, slow exhale through vents and ducts. And somewhere, compressors would kick on and off with a mechanical cough. Lights would click. Pipes tapped as if they were cooling down from a fever. The distant clack of a janitor's cart echoed through the corridors like footsteps chasing you. I told myself it was normal. I told myself it was all normal. And then on my 6th night inside Hawthorne, I heard them all speak. It happened sometime after 2 or so. I remember because I'd been staring at my phone, watching the battery percentage like it mattered. I didn't have service, but the screen glow was company. The lock screen still showed a photo from my old life. My wife laughing, squinting into the sun, and holding up a shopping bag like we just won something. I should have changed it. I never could. I just started to drift when the overhead speaker crackled. Not the tiny music that played during store hours. Not the "please do not leave your children unattended" announcements. This was different. Like the system hadn't been used in years and someone had just pulled it out of storage. A long, wet pop came through the speaker. Then a voice, low and careful, like it didn't want to wake something up.
Attention, valued guests. Hawthorne Galleria is now closed. Please make your final purchases and proceed calmly to the nearest exit.
It wasn't unusual for malls to announce closing. I'd heard it during the day, but this voice wasn't the usual bright, chirpy recorded woman. This voice sounded like a man trying to imitate her. And it came at 2 a.m. I froze so hard my joints hurt. And then the speaker clicked again.
We appreciate your patronage. Please return tomorrow.
Then silence. The hum of the lights returned like nothing had happened. I sat there with my breath trapped in my chest, listening. No footsteps, no radio chatter, and doors weren't slamming or anything like that. Maybe a guard had bumped the control panel by accident. Maybe the old system was glitching and playing a recording on a timer that nobody remembered existed. That's what I told myself. But I couldn't shake the way the voice had sounded. Like it was close. Not in the sense of distance. I mean, speakers are everywhere. But close in the sense of intention. Like someone had spoken directly into the mouth of the mall and used it to talk. I didn't sleep again that night. The next day, I watched the security guards more carefully. There were 2 regular ones I'd seen. This big guy with a shaved head who walked like he'd done time in the military, and a thinner one with tired eyes who always rubbed his jaw like it ached. They were both normal. Boring humans. I followed them at a distance, staying in blind spots and ducking into alcoves when they turned, until I saw them do their usual, checking doors, shining flashlights into empty storefronts, and making notes on a clipboard. No one went near the announcement office. No one touched any controls. So that night, I tried something different. I didn't hide in a closet. I moved. If you ever want to feel what it's like to be a ghost, walk through a mall after it closes. Without people, the place is too big for itself. The tiled corridors stretch farther than they should. The skylights above turn black and reflective, like eyes that stopped blinking. And the storefront mannequins become silhouettes in the dim emergency lighting. Their smooth faces turn toward the walkway, as if they're waiting for something. I kept my footsteps soft, soles rolling from heel to toe. I knew where the cameras were, mostly. and I'd watched the guards enough to see which angles they trusted. I stayed close to the walls, using planters and kiosks as a cover, moved when the distant squeak of a guard's shoes told me he was facing away. I had made it to the food court without trouble. The food court at night was a different kind of dead. Chair legs sat upturned on tables. The smell of grease lingered like a memory that didn't want to fade. Neon signs were off, leaving faint outlines in the darkness, like after images burned into your eyes. I stood at the edge and listened. There was music, not the piped-in mall playlist, not even the soft, forgotten melody of an employee's phone. It was coming from the carousel. Hawthorne had one of those small kiddie rides by the food court entrance. Bright plastic horses, painted too cheery, bolted to a rotating platform. During the day, it blinked and spun when parents fitted dollar bills to buy 5 minutes of peace. And at night, it was supposed to be off, but its lights were on. Not all of them, just enough to make it look like it was breathing back to life. The carousel turned slowly, not at full speed, just a lazy rotation, like it was thinking about it. And it played a lullaby I hadn't heard since I was a kid. The exact melody my mother used to hum when she did the dishes. Soft, wordless, like she didn't want me to know she was trying to calm me down. My throat tightened. I took a step closer, then another, and the horse's plastic eyes caught the dim light and made tiny reflections that looked wet and alive. The lullaby slowed. The carousel slowed with it sinking like the machine was listening to itself. Then, without warning, it stopped. The music cut in the middle of a note, and the sudden silence made my ears ring. I stood there in the dark, waiting for a guard to come running, waiting for an alarm, waiting for anything that really made sense. But nothing happened. From somewhere deeper in the mall, a speaker crackled.
Attention, valued guests.
The voice again, lower and closer, and this time amused.
The food court is now open. Please enjoy your meal.
Then they clicked off. I backed away so fast that my heel hit a chair leg and made a scrape. The sound shot through the empty space like a gunshot. I didn't want to see if anyone heard. I turned and moved, fast but controlled, and headed back toward the employee corridors. As I passed the dark storefronts, I glanced into one. An empty clothing store with racks pushed against the walls like dead trees. In the middle of the store, under the dim glow of an exit sign, stood a man. He wasn't there before. I would have seen him. He stood perfectly still, facing the glass, facing me. And he wore a suit, a good one, dark and clean, the kind that fit like it had been tailored. His hands were in his pockets, and his head tilted slightly, like he was curious. His face was hard to make out in the darkness, but I knew the posture. I had that posture once, when I still belonged in a suit. The hair at the back of my neck lifted, so I kept walking. I didn't run. Running draws eyes. Running is a confession of guilt, even when you aren't guilty. I walked like I belonged, like I was an employee doing a late check. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw the man move. Just one small shift, like a mannequin being adjusted. And my mouth went dry. I didn't look back again until I was through the employee door and in the ugly hallway behind the stores, where the mall's glossy illusion peeled away and showed its bones. Only then did I start to shake. I told myself it was some other homeless guy, someone else hiding in the mall like me, wearing stolen clothes. Except that suit hadn't been stolen. I mean, it looked perfect. And the mall's voice hadn't sounded like an automated system. It sounded like it was talking to me. I thought about leaving after that. I really did. But as I stood by one of the emergency exits in the service tunnel, hand hovering near the push bar, listening for alarms, I pictured myself stepping out into the cold night and walking until my legs burned. But then what? Outside, there were cops who moved you along, people who treated you like a problem, and the weather that didn't care if you had somewhere to go. Inside, there was heat. There was water, and there were rules that I understood. So I stayed. And Hawthorne learned my name. It started small. I'd find things moved, not stolen, just moved. My blanket folded tighter than I'd left it. My backpack turned so the zipper faced outward, like someone wanted it easier to open. My soap would be placed neatly on the edge of the sink instead of on the floor. I know, gross. At first I thought a janitor had found my stuff and decided to be kind. But no one confronted me. No one left me a note or tried to take it away. It was like the mall had tidied up for me. Then the signs began to change. Hawthorne had those big directory maps at every main intersection, glass covered, lit from behind, and listing stores that no longer existed. One morning, as I slipped through the corridors before opening, I glanced at a directory and froze. There between Briar Jewelers and Sunset Footwear was a new listing. Home. No store number, no logo, just the word in plain black letters. I stared at it until my eyes watered. And when I looked again, the word was gone. I started keeping track of time more carefully. I made sure I was always hidden by closing time. Always in the service hallways, away from the main corridors, and I avoided the food court entirely. But even hidden, I could hear things. Footsteps in the main after the guards finished their rounds. Laughter, quiet, polite laughter, echoing from the empty wings. A child crying once. It was thin and far away, but it was like it was coming from inside the walls. And sometimes, the speaker voice.
Welcome back. Please enjoy your visit. We have missed you.
I stopped charging my phone because I didn't want the light. I didn't want anything that made me stand out. And that's when the dreams started. I would fall asleep for what felt like minutes and wake up with the taste of cinnamon in my mouth, like I'd been eating something sweet in my sleep. Sometimes I'd dream I was back in my old life, back in my apartment, clean sheets, my wife's hair spread across the pillow like dark silk. In the dream, I'd hear the mall's air system breathing through the vents. I'd wake up sweating, heart pounding, and the fluorescent lights above the mop sink would be flickering in slow, steady rhythm, like a pulse. And on the 12th night, the mall stopped being subtle. I had been careful, extra careful, and I waited until I was sure the guards had passed my corridor. I listened until I couldn't hear their radios anymore, and then I crept out toward the closed wing, the one sealed off with the mural wall. I didn't know why I went there. Curiosity, maybe, or that quiet, awful feeling that the mall had been arranging my steps and I was just following. The mural was painted bright, families carrying bags and smiling, even waving as if inviting you in. But in the dim night lighting, their eyes looked wrong. Too dark and deep. I ran my fingers along the seam where the temporary wall met the floor. Cold air slid out from beneath it, not the neutral chill of an unheated space. This air smelled like rain on concrete, like the outdoors. There was no way outside air should be leaking into the mall from behind a sealed wall. I crouched and pressed my ear to the gap, and at first, nothing but the deep hum of the building. Then faintly, music. A distant, slow instrumental track. The kind of music they play in department stores to make you feel like time is softer than it is. And under the music, voices. People talking, shopping. I sat back hard, my heart hammering. That wing was closed. It had been closed for years, and everyone knew it. There were no stores there, no lights. Yet behind this wall, it sounded like a busy Saturday afternoon. My hand moved without permission and slid into the gap, fingers feeling for a latch, a weakness, an opening, anything. Something touched my fingertips. Not a latch, a hand, warm and gentle. It curled around my fingers like someone taking them in greeting. I yanked my hand back so fast, I scraped my knuckles. I stumbled away, breathing hard, and the mall speaker crackled overhead. This time, the voice didn't pretend to be polite. This time, it sounded pleased.
There you are.
I stood frozen in an empty corridor, staring up at the ceiling tiles like I could see through them. And the voice continued softer.
You're late.
The lights along the sealed wing flickered, one by one, like a row of eyes opening. And the mural, the painted family, their smiles seemed to be widened in the shifting light. So I ran. I ran like all my rules had shattered all at once. I hit the employee door, nearly slamming my shoulder into it. I flew down the yellow hallway, bare feet whispering on linoleum, my breath loud in my ears, and behind me, somewhere in the mall proper, I heard the sound of many footsteps. They weren't running, they were walking, but hundreds of them. A crowd moving in unison, calm and patient, like a line forming outside of a store on Black Friday. And then the worst part, the sound of shopping bags rustling, paper handles creaking under weight. I didn't stop until I got to the service tunnels, where the air was damp and smelled like rust. I wedged myself into a narrow space between stacked pallets and pressed a hand over my mouth to keep me from gasping. The footsteps continued above me, muffled through the floor. A crowd, constantly moving, passing me by, hopefully. And then a different sound, a long groan of the old freight elevator opening. Something heavy shifted like carts rolling. The crowd's footsteps faded, and when silence finally returned, it wasn't relief. It was the kind of silence that happens after something has fed. I stayed hidden until dawn. When morning came, the mall resumed its daytime face like nothing had happened. Stores opened, and employees yawned and unlocked gates, while teenagers wandered in half asleep, carrying energy drinks, ready to spend mommy and daddy's money. The same security guards walked their rounds. I watched a mother buy her kid a ride on the carousel. It worked normally as it should, with bright lights and cheery music. No lullaby. No slow spinning like it had its own mind. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined everything. Almost. And then I saw it. The directory map. The one near the food court. I stood behind a pillar and stared at it through the crowd. The listings were normal. Briar Jewelers, Sunset Footwear, Nook and Needle, in there in plain black letters, as if it had always been there. Home, lower level. Hawthorne didn't have a lower level. Not for shoppers. My hands went a little cold. I did something reckless that afternoon. I followed the thinner security guard. His name tag read R. Lane. He did his round past the closed wing, pausing by the mural wall, and then he stood there longer than usual, like he was listening. He then lifted his radio and spoke quietly. I couldn't hear the words, but his posture changed, subtle and tight, like a man answering someone he didn't want to talk to. Then he walked away, rubbing his jaw like it hurt. I followed him through an employee door and into the back corridors. He stopped at a maintenance room and unlocked it. I waited in the shadow of a vending machine until the door clicked and shut behind him. Then I moved. I slipped to the door and pressed my ear against it. Inside, I heard him exhale, a long, tired sound, and then very softly, like someone speaking to a person in the dark.
Not tonight, okay? Not tonight.
A pause. A crackle. Faint but clear, like a radio reply. But not his radio. Something else. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone. The tone sounded like them all. Our Lane sighed again.
I know, he's here. I saw him. Just let him be.
My stomach dropped. He knew I was there. The crackle came again, and this time the sound was sharper, irritated, like static biting. Our Lane's voice went tight.
No, I'm not doing that. You want him, take him yourself.
Silence. Then a sound that made my skin prickle. A faint, distant laughter, as if from a speaker somewhere far away. Our Lane swore under his breath. Then he said something that made my blood run cold.
Don't use her voice. That's not fair.
I backed away so quietly I thought my bones would give me away. I returned to my closet and sat with my knees to my chest, staring at the mop sink until my eyes blurred. Don't use her voice. The mall had been inside my dreams, inside my memories. It knew what I missed. It knew what could pull me out of hiding. That night I didn't sleep, not a wink. I just waited and listened. At 11:47, the last store gate clattered shut. At 12:15, the janitors rolled their carts down the main corridor, their laughter echoing. At 1:03, the big security guard's flashlight beam swept past the employee door I used, slow and bored. At 2 o'clock, the mall spoke. The speaker crackled overhead, filling the hidden hallway with that careful, close voice.
Attention, valued guest.
I held my breath.
A special sale is now available. Limited time only.
A pause, like it was savoring something.
Lost and Found is now open.
The lights in my hallway flickered, then steadied. A new sound rose from the vents, whispering, almost too soft to hear. Words sliding together like breath against glass. I stood moving like a sleepwalker. I didn't want to go. Every part of me screamed to stay hidden, but my feet carried me out anyway, through the employee corridors toward the main mall. The air felt thicker, like walking through humid summer night air, except it was indoors. The fluorescent lights were dimmer, tinted slightly yellow, like old photographs. The mall's usual hum had changed. It wasn't a steady, mechanical sound anymore. It rose and felt like breathing. When I reached the main corridor, I stopped. The mall was open. Not in the way it was during the day. Storefronts that were empty in daylight were lit now, warm and inviting. Signs glowed where they had been blank walls. The sealed wing's mural wall was gone, replaced by a wide entrance framed in polished wood. Inside it, I could see a department store floor that shouldn't exist. Rows of racks, shiny counters, soft music drifting like perfume. And people, so many people. They moved slowly, calmly, shopping with practiced ease. They carried bags, they talked in quiet, polite voices. A couple laughed softly, as if sharing a private joke. Their faces looked almost normal from a distance. Almost. Then one of them turned his head too far, like a puppet on a loose string, and I saw his eyes. They reflected light wrong, flat, bright, like glass marbles. I backed up, but the corridor behind me was darker than it should have been, longer than it should have been. I turned back toward the open mall. Across the corridor, near the directory map, stood a kiosk that hadn't existed during the day. Its sign, written in neat cursive red, lost and found. Behind the counter sat a woman. Her hair was the same dark brown, the same waves, her posture, the tilt of her head. My wife. She looked up and smiled, and the smile was perfect. Too perfect.
Hey,
She said, in her voice, warm and familiar. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I took a step and then I froze. Her eyes were wrong. Not glass, not marbles. They were just empty in a way living eyes aren't. Like someone had painted pupils on a doll and called it good enough. She tapped the counter lightly.
come on.
She said.
You've been wandering forever.
The mall speakers whispered overhead, soft and coaxing.
Home is this way.
I didn't realize I was crying until my cheek felt wet. Why are you doing this? I whispered. The thing wearing her face tilted its head, and for a second the smile slipped, like it didn't understand the concept of why. Then it smiled again, because that's what she would do.
You can stop being tired.
It said.
You can stop hiding. You can have your life back.
Behind it, a door opened. Not a mall door. A door like an entrance to a house. A door like the entrance to a house. Warm light spilled out. I smelled something that made my knees go weak. Cinnamon. Fresh laundry. The faint scent of her shampoo. The doorframe was familiar, scuffed at the bottom like where our old dog used to scratch it. I started shaking. The thing behind the counter leaned forward, voice soft.
All you have to do is come in.
And I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to so badly that my body took another step without asking. And then I remembered Rule 3. Never be somewhere you can't leave in under 10 seconds. That door looked like leaving, but it felt like a trap. I forced myself to look away from the warm light and scan the mall. The shoppers drifted slowly, pushing strollers and carrying coffee cups while checking phones. But their phones didn't glow. The strollers were empty. Their bags were too heavy, stretched at odd angles like they contained things that didn't fit. I looked closer at one man in a sweater vest. He passed under a light, and his shadow didn't match him. The shadow was taller, thinner, with arms too long. I stepped back. The thing behind the counter frowned. Not my wife's frown. Something sharper.
Don't you want to be found?
The mall's lights dimmed slightly as if offended. I swallowed hard and forced words out. I'm not lost, I said. The lie tasted like metal. Then from somewhere in the crowd, a sound rose. Shopping bags rustling, handles creaking. It spreaded like a ripple, moving toward me. The thing behind the counter smiled again, but now the smile stretched too wide.
Then why are you here?
The crowd's footsteps shifted. They turned, all of them, facing me. I backed away, heart hammering. The thing behind the counter lifted a hand and pointed, slow and deliberate. The crowd began to walk toward me in unison. Not fast, nor angry, just inevitable. The mall's speakers crackled above, and the voice, delighted, said,
Final sale.
I ran. I broke every rule. I sprinted toward the employee door, into the back hallways and the service tunnels, toward anything that wasn't the warm light pretending to be a home I'd already lost. The shoppers didn't run. They didn't have to. No matter how fast I moved, the hallway stretched. The floor seemed to tilt, and the exit signs pointed the wrong way. I slammed into an employee door that should have been there. It wasn't. It was a blank wall, and panic choked me. I spun, searching. The crowd was closer now, their footsteps soft and synchronized. Their faces were clearer, skin too smooth, and their smiles too fixed. Their eyes were reflecting the dim lights like cheap plastic, and in the middle of them, walking calmly, was Lane, the security guard. His face was pale, drawn, eyes wide with something like an apology. He raised his hands, palms out.
Hey,
He called softly.
hey, listen to me.
I stopped, chest heaving. He stepped closer, careful, like approaching a scared animal.
You have to go down.
He said. Down? He nodded, glancing behind him at the crowd, then back at me.
They don't like it when you run. Makes them interested.
He swallowed.
There's a stairwell, service stairwell, near the old fountain. It goes to the lower levels.
There is no lower level. Lane's jaw tightened.
There is at night.
The crowd behind him took another synchronized step forward. Lane leaned closer and spoke fast and urgent.
Don't look at the counter again. Don't listen if it uses her voice. Just go down. There's a door at the bottom. If you can get through it before...
A crackle cut him off. Not his radio. The mall's voice, whispering through the speakers and the vents, maybe as if it was the air itself.
Randy.
Lane flinched like he'd been slapped. The crowd stopped, all at once, just waiting. Lane swallowed hard and looked at me with raw fear.
I'm sorry,
he mouthed. Then his expression went blank, like a switch flipped. He turned slowly and walked back into the crowd, disappearing among them as if he'd never been separate. I stood alone in the corridor, trembling. The mall's voice sighed, almost tender.
Come home.
I forced myself to move. I ran toward the old fountain. Hawthorne's fountain had been drained for years. During the day, it was a sad concrete bowl filled with pennies and dust. At night, it was filled with dark water that reflected the ceiling like a second sky. I skidded to a stop beside it, breath ragged. There was a service door behind the fountain, half hidden by a fake plant. I'd never noticed it during the day. Of course I hadn't. The mall didn't want me to. I yanked it open. A stairwell yawned downward, concrete steps spiraling into darkness. Cold air rose from below, smelling like wet stone. Behind me, the crowd's footsteps resumed. Slow and calm, I plunged down the stairs. The light above faded quickly, and after a few turns, I was nearer in total darkness. My hand slid along the damp wall, fingers brushing peeling paint. The deeper I went, the more the air changed. It wasn't the stale indoor air of the mall anymore. It smelled like earth, like a basement that had been sealed for decades. The sound of the mall above me muffled until it was only a distant hum, like an ocean far away. And at the bottom of the stairwell was a door. Not a metal service door, a wooden door. White paint chipped at the edges, a brass knob polished by use. And my heart stopped. It was my apartment door, the one from my old life. The one my wife and I had hung a wreath on every Christmas. My hand hovered over the knob, shaking. From above, faint and far, the mall's voice whispered,
"You're almost home."
I stared at the door, tears blurring my vision. This was what it wanted. This was what it had been building. Not a trap made of teeth and claws, a trap made of longing. I stepped back and looked down. And at the base of the door, where the paint was chipped, something dark seeped out. Not a shadow, not dirt, something thick, slow, and alive. It pulsed faintly, like a vein. I swallowed bile. I forced myself to do the hardest thing I'd done since the divorce papers hit the table. I turned away from my old door, and I walked deeper into the lower level. Because past the stairwell, the basement corridor stretched on, long and low and unfinished. Pipes ran overhead like ribs. The concrete floor was damp and stained. The lights were dim and flickering away weakly. And at the far end of the corridor, a green exit sign glowed. Real and simple. Not warming nor inviting, just an exit. I moved toward it, step by step, ignoring the whispers behind me, ignoring the faint sound of my wife's voice calling my name, calling it the way she used to when she wanted me to come to bed. The exit sign grew closer. Under it was a door, plain metal, push bar, industrial. No memories attached. I put my hands on the bar, and it was cold and solid. I shoved the door open and stepped out into Hawthorne Galleria. In the main corridor, the glossy tile, the storefronts, the kiosks, exactly where they'd been, and my breath caught. I spun, slamming the door shut behind me. The exit sign above it flickered, and then changed. The green letters rearranged slowly, like pixels shifting. Home. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The mall lights had dimmed and the air grew thick. And from the speakers overhead, the voice, so close now it felt like it was breathing into my ear, whispered,
"Rule 1, never get noticed.
I froze.
Rule 2, never get comfortable.
My hands shook.
Rule 3,
The voice paused, savoring.
never be somewhere you can't leave in under 10 seconds.
The mall lights flickered in a slow, steady rhythm. From the shadows at the far end of the corridor, a crowd began to form, quiet, polite, and inevitable. Shopping bags rustled like leaves in dead wind, and the mall, patient and amused, spoke one last time.
We learned your rules too.
That was 3 nights ago. I'm writing this on a torn receipt with a golf pencil that I stole from the customer service desk. My hands won't stop shaking. My throat hurts from not screaming. During the day, Hawthorne looks normal. People laugh. Kids ride the carousel, and couples split pretzels. No one knows that at night the mall opens a version of itself that isn't meant for them. No one knows there's a lower level that shouldn't exist. And no one knows that one of the security guards has started rubbing his jaw so hard it looks like he's trying to erase himself. Tonight, I'm going to try one more exit. Not because I think it will work, but because I'm starting to hear the speaker voice during the day now, soft and beneath the music, calling me valued guest, calling me home. And the worst part, when I close my eyes, I can smell cinnamon, like something baked in a kitchen that isn't mine anymore, like the mall is setting the table, like it's hungry, and it finally knows exactly what will bring me home. While recording this story, I was pretty sick, so thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you still enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being here.